Welcome to our YouTube channel, where we explore the fascinating world of books and ideas. Today, we'll be diving into the book summary of Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Get ready to expand your mind as we unravel the key concepts and insights from this groundbreaking work in the field of behavioral psychology and decision-making. So, let's dive into the summary of this incredible book. But before we dive into the content, I kindly request a moment of your time to appreciate this video by liking it, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Daniel Kahneman, a renowned psychologist and economist, delves into various cognitive biases and errors that affect our judgment. He introduces concepts like heuristics, anchoring, and overconfidence, shedding light on the inherent flaws in human reasoning. Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is a groundbreaking book that explores how our brain processes information and makes decisions, using two systems: fast, intuitive thinking, and slow, deliberate thinking. It challenges our assumptions about human behavior and offers insights into how we can improve our decision-making skills. Daniel Kahneman, Ph.D., won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002. He is the senior scholar at the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs, Professor of Psychology and Public Affairs Emeritus at the Woodrow Wilson School, Eugene Higgins Professor of Psychology Emeritus at Princeton University, and a Fellow of the Center for Rationality at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Thinking, Fast and Slow, a recapitulation of the decades of research that led to Kahneman's winning the Nobel Prize, explains his contributions to our current understanding of psychology and behavioral economics. Over the years, the research of Kahneman and his colleagues has helped us better understand how decisions are made, why certain judgment errors are so common, and how we can improve ourselves. Thinking, Fast and Slow explores the two systems that shape our thinking and decision-making processes, providing valuable insights for anyone interested in understanding the workings of the mind. Here's why this book is definitely worth reading. It unveils the hidden biases that influence our thoughts and actions, shedding light on the unconscious patterns that drive our behavior. By drawing on a wide range of research studies and experiments, the book offers a comprehensive understanding of how our minds work, challenging conventional wisdom. With its thought-provoking ideas and practical implications, the book sets the stage for self-reflection, transforming the way we perceive ourselves and the world around us. Here is a sentence showcasing the greatness of a quote of this incredible book. A reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow shows you how two systems in your brain are constantly fighting over control of your behavior and actions, and teaches you the many ways in which this leads to errors in memory, judgment, and decisions, and what you can do about it. Say what you will, they don't hand out the Nobel Prize for economics like it's a slice of pizza. Ergo, when Daniel Kahneman does something, it's worth paying attention to. His 2011 book, Thinking Fast and Slow, deals with the two systems in our brain, whose fighting over who's in charge makes us prone to errors and false decisions. It shows you where you can and can't trust your gut feeling and how to act more mindfully and make better decisions. Here are 3 good lessons to know what's going on up there. Your behavior is determined by two systems in your mind, one conscious and the other automatic. Your brain is lazy and thus keeps you from using the full power of your intelligence. When you're making decisions about money, leave your emotions at home. Want to school your brain? Let's take a field trip through the mind. Lesson 1. Your behavior is determined by two systems in your mind, one conscious and the other automatic. Kahneman labels the two systems in your mind as follows. System 1 is automatic and impulsive. It's the system you use when someone sketchy enters the train and you instinctively turn towards the door, and what makes you eat the entire bag of chips in front of the TV when you just wanted to have a small bowl. System 1 is a remnant from our past, and it's crucial to our survival. Not having to think before jumping away from a car when it honks at you is quite useful, don't you think? System 2 is very conscious, aware, and considerate. It helps you exert self-control and deliberately focus your attention. This system is at work when you're meeting a friend and trying to spot them in a huge crowd of people, as it helps you recall how they look and filter out all these other people. System 2 is one of the most recent additions to our brain and only a few thousand years old. It's what helps us succeed in today's world, where our priorities have shifted from getting food and shelter to earning money, supporting a family, and making many complex decisions. However, these two systems don't just perfectly alternate or work together. They often fight over who's in charge, and this conflict determines how you act and behave. Lesson 2. Your brain is lazy and causes you to make intellectual errors. Here's an easy trick to show you how this conflict of two systems affects you. It's called the bat and ball problem. A baseball bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? I'll give you a second. Got it? If your instant and initial answer is 10 cents, I'm sorry to tell you that System 1 just tricked you. Do the math again. And once you spent a minute or two actually thinking about it, you'll see that the ball must cost 5 cents. Then, if the bat costs $1 more, it comes out to $1.05, which, combined, gives you $1.10. Fascinating, right? What happened here? When System 1 faces a tough problem it can't solve, it'll call System 2 into action to work out the details. But sometimes your brain perceives problems as simpler as they actually are. System 1 thinks it can handle it even though it actually can't, and you end up making a mistake. Why does your brain do this? Just as with habits, it wants to save energy. The law of least effort states that your brain uses the minimum amount of energy for each task it can get away with. So when it seems System 1 can handle things, it won't activate System 2. In this case, though, it leads you to not use all of your IQ points even though you'd actually need to, so our brain limits our intelligence by being lazy. Lesson 3. When you're making decisions about money, leave your emotions at home. Even though Milton Friedman's research about economics built the foundation of today's work in the field, eventually we came to grips with the fact that the Homo economicus, the man or woman, who only acts based on rational thinking, first introduced by John Stuart Mill, doesn't quite resemble us. Imagine these two scenarios. You're given $1,000. Then you have the choice between receiving another fixed $500 or taking a 50% gamble to win another $1,000. You're given $2,000. Then you have the choice between losing $500 fixed or taking a gamble with a 50% chance of losing another $1,000. Which choice would you make for each one? If you're like most people, you would rather take the safe $500 in Scenario 1, but the gamble in Scenario 2. Yet the odds of ending up at $1,000, $1,500, or $2,000 are the exact same in both. The reason has to do with loss aversion. We're a lot more afraid to lose what we already have, as we are keen on getting more. We also perceive value based on reference points. Starting at $2,000 makes you think you're in a better starting position, which you want to protect. Lastly, we get less sensitive about money, called diminishing sensitivity principle. The more we have, the loss of $500 when you have $2,000 seems smaller than the gain of $500 when you only have $1,000, so you're more likely to take a chance. Be aware of these things. Just knowing your emotions try to confuse you when it's time to talk money will help you make better decisions. Try to consider statistics, probability, and when the odds are in your favor, act accordingly. Don't let emotions get in the way where they have no business. After all, rule number 1 for any good poker player is, leave your emotions at home. Kahneman's thinking in Thinking Fast and Slow reminds a bit of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Anti-Fragile. Very scientific, all backed up with math and facts, yet simple to understand. I highly recommend this book. Those are the individuals who truly deserve to immerse themselves in this extraordinary book. Anyone interested in the human mind, people curious about how we make judgments, students of psychology and behavioral economics, the 17-year-old with an interest in biology and neuroscience, the 67-year-old retiree with a secret passion for gambling, and anyone who's bad at mental math. One of the key concepts explored in the book is prospect theory, which challenges the traditional economic model of rational decision-making. Kahneman and his collaborator, Amos Tversky, show that people's choices are often influenced more by perceived losses than by potential gains, a phenomenon known as loss aversion. Through a series of experiments and real-world examples, Kahneman demonstrates how our minds are prone to biases and errors, leading us to make irrational decisions. By understanding these cognitive traps, we can learn to improve our decision-making skills and avoid common pitfalls. The book offers practical strategies and tips for overcoming cognitive biases and enhancing our thinking processes. From taking a step back to engage System 2 to questioning our intuitions and seeking diverse perspectives, Kahneman provides valuable insights for making better choices in an uncertain world. We tend to believe our decisions are guided by logic and reason. But in Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman argues that our choices are heavily influenced by ingrained mental shortcuts and emotional biases. This is a fundamental challenge to traditional economic models of human behavior. Kahneman outlines two distinct systems of thinking: the automatic System 1, which relies on intuition, and the more deliberate System 2, which applies reasoning. He explores the frequent errors in judgment produced by System 1, such as availability bias, anchoring, and loss aversion. Kahneman also demonstrates how our memories shape our understanding of the past, often inaccurately, guiding us toward decisions that may not make us as happy as we expect. Investigating the psychological aspects of risk evaluation from the perspective of prospect theory. Prospect theory, a groundbreaking theory developed by Kahneman and Tversky, provides a descriptive model of how individuals make decisions under risk and uncertainty. The book challenges traditional economic thought by recognizing the significant influence of psychological factors, particularly the powerful desire to avoid losses, which heavily influences how we make decisions. Individuals generally show a stronger inclination to steer clear of losses than to achieve equivalent gains. The principle that potential losses exert a greater impact on our decision-making than potential gains do is a fundamental aspect of prospect theory. The principle highlights that the unease felt when one loses $100 is more intense than the pleasure experienced from acquiring an equivalent sum. Individuals generally prefer safer alternatives when a potential gain is at stake, yet they often opt for riskier decisions when facing the possibility of a loss. Daniel Kahneman explores the idea of loss aversion through an analysis of how people choose between two different gambling situations. Individuals typically opt for the guaranteed receipt of $900 over a 90% likelihood of winning $1,000, even though the latter choice offers a higher expected value. When individuals are presented with the choice between a certain loss of $900 and a 90% chance to lose $1,000, they often opt for the riskier option, despite its expected value being less favorable. This behavior, which appears illogical, stems from a significant aversion to incurring losses. We frequently feel the urge to take risks in order to avoid a definite loss, even when the chances are not in our favor. The tendency to prioritize the avoidance of losses over the pursuit of similar gains is evident in numerous domains, including economics, law, and social interactions, and is identified as loss aversion. We often place a higher emphasis on dodging losses than on seeking comparable gains, which affects many areas of our lives. The book explores behavior in economics, emphasizing that investors frequently persist with underperforming stocks, which affects judicial decisions as judges are inclined to make different rulings when balancing potential gains against acknowledging losses, and it shapes social interactions, where people generally put more effort into protecting what they own than in acquiring new benefits. Grasping the nuances of human behavior is essential for successful interaction within societal and financial contexts. The establishment of benchmarks illustrates how the context surrounding a decision can shift preferences, showing that decisions are prone to being swayed. Kahneman emphasizes the profound influence that the context in which choices are presented exerts on the way we make decisions, along with our tendency to prioritize avoiding losses over securing gains. Our decision-making process can be substantially swayed by the presentation of a problem, either by underscoring its potential benefits or by accentuating the potential downsides. People generally respond more favorably to the framing of a medical procedure as having a 90% survival rate rather than a 10% mortality rate, despite both descriptions conveying the identical reality. Customers are typically more inclined to pass up a discount than to agree to an extra charge, even though the final price remains the same. The manner in which options are framed plays a crucial role in shaping our decision-making, highlighting our susceptibility to the portrayal of potential risks and rewards. Desires are structured into a framework comprising 4 separate components. Prospect theory's core principle. which clarifies how probability distortion and loss aversion interact, accounts for the differences in personal risk inclinations in 4 distinct scenarios. Our decision-making is profoundly influenced by the interplay of hopefulness, concern, and the potential consequences, each with its own degree of certainty. The process of making decisions is deeply affected by the balance of hopefulness and caution, as well as by the impact of potential outcomes and their probabilities. Daniel Kahneman clarifies his concept by illustrating it with 4 scenarios that encompass a range of outcomes, some beneficial and others not. People generally prefer the certainty of a sure gain over the possibility of a slightly higher gain that is associated with the risk of betting, even when the chances are advantageous. Faced with a substantial likelihood of loss, individuals are inclined to opt for riskier alternatives, even if it means accepting a bet that might yield a reduced expected payoff to avoid a definite loss. When we come across probabilities that are extremely low, our perception of their chances alters. People frequently demonstrate a tendency to engage in risky behavior, as shown by their willingness to purchase lottery tickets even though there is a very small chance of winning a significant prize. Individuals generally opt for the security of insurance, paying a premium to mitigate the concern associated with the slim chance of incurring a major loss, rather than taking on risk in situations where there is a potential for infrequent yet considerable losses. Understanding the interplay between evaluating likelihoods and the reluctance to endure losses illuminates the diverse approaches to risk across various contexts. Kahneman emphasizes a clear pattern in decision-making processes that arises from how different levels of importance are attributed to probabilities and the impact of the S-shaped value function on how we view profits and setbacks. He contends that we have a propensity to give too much importance to low probabilities and too little to high probabilities when compared to certainty, and at the same time, we show a reduced awareness of the significance of both progressively larger gains and progressively larger losses. The observed tendency to either shun or seek risk across the 4 scenarios is shaped by how loss aversion interacts with different factors. The insights provided in the book greatly enhance our understanding of decision-making processes in real-life situations, such as in legal contracts and monetary investments. Kahneman illustrates the real-world consequences of the fourfold pattern through examples drawn from the realms of law and finance. A plaintiff with a strong case might settle for less to avoid the discomfort associated with losing in court, while a defendant whose case is weaker may choose to go to trial, hoping to avoid what seems like an inevitable loss. Individual investors often sell off their profitable shares prematurely to lock in gains, yet they hold on to their losing stocks for an extended period, reluctant to acknowledge the losses, which is a behavior that goes against sound investment strategies. The phenomenon known as the endowment effect. The endowment effect, a powerful demonstration of loss aversion, describes our tendency to value goods that we own more highly than goods we do not, even if the objective values are identical. The idea underscores the significance of reference points and how our minds perceive the acquisition versus the loss of something. We frequently place a higher value on our belongings, concentrating on the discomfort associated with their loss rather than the joy of acquiring them. Daniel Kahneman sheds light on the endowment effect through reference to a famous study that used mugs. Some participants were given coffee mugs during the experiment, while others were merely allowed to examine them without owning them. Mug owners were asked to state the amount they would require to give up their item, while those without mugs were questioned on the amount they would be willing to spend to obtain one. The outcomes consistently demonstrated that individuals who were selling set higher prices than those who were purchasing, despite both having the identical option of leaving with either cash or a mug. The discomfort felt upon losing an item often overshadows the happiness that comes with acquiring it, which skews our perception of the item's worth based on whether we own it or not. Loss aversion's influence in fostering a hesitancy to engage in trade-related actions. Kahneman suggests that the inclination to steer clear of losses is foundational to the observation that individuals ascribe greater significance to possessions simply by virtue of their ownership. We generally prefer to avoid the loss of our possessions rather than experiencing the happiness that might come from gaining something of equivalent value. The mug experiment illustrates a common reluctance to participate in exchanges when faced with certain circumstances. For example, Numerous property owners are reluctant to price their homes in alignment with the true worth assigned by economic forces, because they are averse to conceding to a sale amount that falls below their original purchase price, which they view as a significant financial setback, even though clinging to this loss might result in missing out on more favorable opportunities. Our preferences can be influenced by how we mentally classify financial transactions, particularly when we view them as expenses or losses. Kahneman highlights the magnification of the endowment effect as it is strengthened by the mental act of attributing particular worth to items. Daniel Kahneman presents the idea that our perception of a transaction's value can be influenced by whether we view it as a cost or a loss. For instance, if you happen to lose a $10 note, you are likely to simply deduct it from your wealth and proceed with your daily activities. If you lose a $10 movie pass that you had purchased, you might be reluctant to buy another one, even though the monetary loss is the same. Misplacing a ticket can feel like an additional expense when intending to attend a movie. The idea of incurring a cost twice often feels more disagreeable than the idea of relinquishing the same amount of money once. This illustration reveals that the presentation of information can shape our perception of costs and shortfalls, highlighting the significant impact that our cognitive approach to financial transactions has on the decisions we take. The interplay between cognitive functions and the emotions they provoke. Our cognitive processes and emotional responses are interwoven, forming the foundation for the choices and conclusions we make. Kahneman emphasizes that while we tend to believe our choices are rational and deliberate, the reality is that our intuitions and feelings often play a much larger role than we realize. The notion of cognitive ease. Our brain effortlessly blends understanding through a phenomenon often referred to as cognitive ease. Kahneman suggests that elements such as familiarity, readability, and our emotional condition can significantly distort our judgments. Our mind's ability to process information smoothly is influenced by our level of acquaintance with the topic, how clearly the information is presented, and the emotions we are experiencing when we encounter it. Kahneman explains that information that is easily understood, familiar, or presented in a clear and legible font is seen as requiring less mental effort, while information that is difficult to understand, unfamiliar, or poorly presented requires more cognitive effort. Daniel Kahneman suggests that our feelings greatly influence how effortlessly we process information. When we are happy, our thinking tends to be more agile, whereas sadness can render our cognitive tasks more cumbersome. A declaration tends to appear trustworthy and familiar when it is displayed in clear typeface, under good lighting, and is frequently repeated. A statement that is accurate in its content may occasionally be perceived as false if it is displayed in a manner that strains the reader cognitively, such as through poor lighting, an unappealing typeface, or convoluted language. A sense of ease and recognition can occasionally lead to errors in assessing accuracy, which in turn increases confidence and the likelihood of being deceived. Kahneman highlights how the ease of our cognitive processing can sometimes lead to deceptive impressions, particularly when they unintentionally lend support to falsehoods. We frequently mistake the ease of comprehension for truthfulness, leading us to regard readily understandable information as more credible, despite potential doubts about its accuracy. Familiarity with a statement through frequent repetition can lead us to perceive it as true, regardless of its actual veracity. Even a fundamentally flawed argument can appear persuasive when articulated with compelling and elegant rhetoric. Kahneman suggests that this tendency increases our vulnerability to external influences and reinforces an undue confidence in our own beliefs. The book delves deeper into the ways in which superficial signals can sway choices within the spheres of persuasion and marketing. Kahneman emphasizes the significant influence that our mind's automatic assimilation of information has on the strategies used in persuasion and marketing. He argues that professionals in marketing and advertising intentionally employ strategies that exploit our tendency to equate familiarity and simplicity of comprehension with integrity and value. Products associated with positive feelings, brands whose names are easily pronounced, and messages that captivate through memorable rhymes or striking visuals are often evaluated more favorably. Being aware of our innate biases empowers us to examine marketing tactics more thoroughly, thereby diminishing their potential impact on our decision-making. Emotions take precedence. Kahneman suggests that our emotions often overshadow our capacity for logical reasoning, molding our view of the world and significantly affecting the decisions and judgments we make. Daniel Kahneman's work highlights a major barrier that hinders the logical aspect of human decision-making. Our feelings frequently sway the way we make decisions and form judgments, especially in situations where the outcomes are not clear. Kahneman suggests that, in the absence of clear answers, our decisions are frequently influenced by our emotional responses. Our assessment of potential dangers and rewards is shaped by our emotions. A positive reaction leads us to view something as less risky and more beneficial, whereas a negative reaction tends to make us perceive it as more hazardous and less advantageous. For instance, when evaluating various investment options, you tend to emphasize the favorable characteristics of a particular choice while downplaying its possible disadvantages, even though another option could be safer and offer higher returns. Individuals frequently mold their policy choices and assess dangers more on emotional responses than on rational analysis. Daniel Kahneman describes the effect heuristic as a mental shortcut where people rely on their emotions to tackle complex questions when they lack adequate information. He argues that instead of engaging in the demanding process of thorough analysis, we often choose to ask ourselves a simpler question: how do I feel about this? This substitution mechanism allows us to make quick choices, but often leads to decisions that lack a rational foundation and are biased. Our understanding of risk can be significantly distorted by fear and anxiety, leading us to misjudge the likelihood and potential outcomes of an event. The conclusions drawn from Slavik's research showed that the degree of risk individuals attributed to specific technologies, like nuclear power or food preservatives, correlated strongly with their dislike for these technologies, irrespective of the actual threat they posed. Politicians and marketers often persuade us to support their initiatives by playing to our emotions, steering us through our fears and hopes rather than presenting rational arguments that shape our views on policies. Emotions play a crucial role in shaping the way information is presented, thereby affecting the choices we make, highlighting the limitations inherent in purely rational analysis. Kahneman highlights the deliberate use of emotional context to sway decisions and preferences, illustrating the dominance of emotional influences on what we often consider to be rational choices. Highlighting the potential for losses can prompt people to make more conservative choices, influenced by an increased level of concern. Individuals are more inclined to support assertive measures when a public health issue is framed in terms of lives lost rather than lives saved, even though the end results are essentially identical. This illustration shows how the emotional delivery of information considerably influences what seems to be our rational decision-making process, underscoring the inherent limitations of our mental capabilities. The process and considerations involved in our economic decision-making. Daniel Kahneman's work has profoundly influenced the field of economics by challenging the foundational assumptions of traditional economic theories, particularly the idea that people's choices are solely driven by logical evaluation. This section explores the influence of psychological factors on our reasoning capabilities and provides guidance to improve our decision-making processes. The capacity for human reasoning is not without its limits. Daniel Kahneman's research provides compelling evidence that human behavior often deviates from what is predicted by the traditional model of rational agents in economics. He suggests that the choices we make are heavily swayed by our instinctive feelings and ingrained prejudices, highlighting the limitations of our ability to reason logically. The book demonstrates the frequency with which cognitive biases and emotional factors cause behavior to diverge from what would be anticipated from a logically reasoning individual. Kahneman uses numerous examples, such as the conjunction fallacy, to demonstrate how people often reach conclusions that defy logical reasoning due to inherent cognitive biases and emotional responses. The study challenges the notion that individuals consistently make decisions aligned with their long-term interests, decisions that are presumed to stem from an impartial assessment of relevant data. The persistent adherence to existing theories frequently conceals the recognition of shortcomings within established frameworks. Kahneman argues that persisting in the use of outdated models such as Bernoulli's expected utility theory demonstrates what he calls theory-induced blindness, a situation in which the widespread acceptance and appeal of a theoretical framework can hinder our recognition of its inherent flaws. Professionals often cling to established theories and rationalize inconsistencies rather than accepting the need for a new paradigm, even when faced with evidence that contradicts their beliefs. The contributions of Kahneman have highlighted the gradual recognition of key behavioral insights, which has hindered progress in multiple fields. Understanding psychological principles is crucial when analyzing economic behavior. Kahneman emphasizes the significance of incorporating psychological insights into economic theory, which significantly enhances our understanding of real-world economic behavior. For instance, understanding that individuals are more inclined to steer clear of losses than to obtain comparable benefits sheds light on why companies hesitate to lower prices, even amidst a market slump, as they worry about consumer backlash who view price increases as detrimental. Understanding the impact of emotional responses and cognitive distortions on investor behavior provides a solid foundation for analyzing market movements. Psychological insights, when incorporated into economic theories, play a vital role in enhancing the precision of forecasts, shaping more effective policies, and improving decision-making in diverse economic contexts, a concept put forward by the psychologists. Improving the process by which decisions are made. Kahneman explores strategies that improve decision-making and diminish partiality in assessments, relevant to individual and corporate settings. He emphasizes the importance of actively challenging our intuitions, considering broader perspectives, and relying on rules and formulas where appropriate. The book underscores the importance of developing strategies to reduce the impact of cognitive biases on how experts make decisions. Kahneman suggests that while true expertise exists, experts are not immune to cognitive biases, especially when they step outside their area of specialization or face complex situations filled with unpredictability. He underscores the necessity of creating techniques that improve our capacity for evaluation and choice-making, particularly in situations where the outcomes are of great importance. The introduction of procedural checklists in the medical field has led to a marked reduction in mistakes and improved outcomes by compensating for the inherent limitations of human memory and attention. Drawing on the outcomes of similar past projects as a basis for forecasting, known as reference class forecasting, can aid in mitigating the tendency for overly optimistic planning and enhance the precision of predictions. In order to counteract the planning fallacy and steer clear of the sunk cost fallacies traps, it's essential to take into account a diverse array of elements and outside situations. Kahneman advocates for the broadening of perspectives and the incorporation of a variety of viewpoints when individuals make decisions. Broad framing encourages us to consider a wider range of relevant information and possible futures, while the outside view forces us to compare our specific situation to a class of similar situations, grounding our predictions in a more realistic assessment of base rates and probabilities. For instance, when planning a project, Kahneman suggests expanding our viewpoint to consider the time similar endeavors have historically taken, which allows us to incorporate a better prediction of potential obstacles into our strategy. When deciding whether to persist with a struggling project, adopting the viewpoint of an individual without prior financial investment forces us to assess if we would initiate funding based solely on the project's prospective future success. In situations where results cannot be predicted with certainty, it is evident that computational methods and systematic processes surpass the decision-making capabilities of humans. Kahneman often highlights how straightforward equations can achieve remarkable outcomes in settings where forecasting outcomes is inherently limited. He contends that under such conditions, simple equations or a balanced mix of forecasting components often surpass the discernment of specialists. A simple formula that considers weather patterns has shown to be more accurate than experienced wine critics at predicting the market value of Bordeaux wines. The ability to forecast a medical student's academic success is more accurately gauged by evaluating their GPA and test scores in unison rather than relying solely on the impressions they make in interviews. Recognizing this advantage of algorithms requires overcoming our intuitive resistance to what feels cold and mechanical, and accepting that in some cases, thinking less actually leads to better outcomes. The preeminence of the recollecting self. In this section, the book explores the contrast between the self that holds onto memories and the self that actually lives through events, scrutinizing how the biases in our memory can shape our happiness and sway our choices, possibly altering our perception of the actual happenings in our lives. The self that lives in the present often has a viewpoint that differs from the self involved in contemplative decision-making. Our understanding of ourselves is influenced by both the events we currently experience and the recollections we preserve. The author distinguishes between the self that experiences events in real time and the self that reflects on those events to inform future choices. The desires of the experiencing self and the remembering self frequently conflict, resulting in discord. This creates a significant challenge to the traditional assumption that individuals know what is best for themselves, suggesting that our choices may not always align with what would make us happiest. Individuals frequently make decisions that are misaligned with their genuine happiness, as they often overlook the duration of an experience and place excessive emphasis on its peak intensity and final moments. Kahneman explains that our memories of past events are often distorted because our minds tend to prioritize the peak moments and endings of those experiences over their duration. Daniel Kahneman posits that when we look back on an event, our assessment is often disproportionately influenced by the peak intensity and the final moments, rather than giving due consideration to the duration of the experience. Individuals opted to tolerate discomfort for a longer duration because the experience ended with a milder intensity of pain, even though it led to a greater total amount of pain. A vacation typically associated with joy can retrospectively take on a negative hue if it ends on a sour note, such as a quarrel or missing a plane. Kahneman suggests that our decision-making might be swayed by memory distortions, resulting in choices that don't accurately represent our actual well-being. Grasping the importance of both the happiness that comes from life's experiences and the decision-making process is essential for personal satisfaction and for developing policies. Kahneman explores the impact of the disparity between our experiential selves, who exist in the present, and our remembering selves, who shape our happiness and choices, on crucial outcomes in leadership. He argues that by neglecting our present self-satisfaction, we might choose options based on distorted memories, which fail to enhance our overall well-being. Relying exclusively on how individuals report their own levels of contentment to gauge well-being might lead to the formulation of misguided approaches within the realm of policy development. For instance, focusing on reducing the fear linked to unlawful behavior, rather than tackling the actual occurrences of criminal acts, may indicate an improper distribution of resources. Kahneman suggests that understanding the interplay between our desire for instant satisfaction and the strength of our wants is crucial for decisions that improve the well-being of individuals as well as that of broader communities. A method that honors individual autonomy while subtly steering decisions towards advantageous outcomes is recognized as a type of soft paternalism that cherishes freedom. The idea of libertarian paternalism, as introduced by Daniel Kahneman and Thaler, offers a framework that harmonizes the significance of individual freedom with the essential role of government intervention. Organizations such as the government can subtly but meaningfully sway individual decisions towards enhancing their long-term welfare while preserving their ability to choose freely. Balancing the respect for individual autonomy in making decisions with the introduction of strategies that steer people towards decisions that enhance their future welfare. Kahneman appreciates autonomy but also acknowledges that human choices are often compromised by inherent cognitive distortions. Should we respect individual autonomy even though it might lead to suboptimal decisions, or is it preferable to constrain their choices to improve their welfare? The philosophy known as libertarian paternalism aims to balance personal autonomy with non-intrusive suggestions, promoting strategies that nudge individuals towards choices that improve their welfare while preserving their freedom to choose. Utilizing subtle prompts to steer decisions while maintaining liberty. Kahneman explores the concept of subtle encouragements designed to guide decisions by capitalizing on the predictable behaviors of System 1, while still preserving the available options without applying significant force. He emphasizes the necessity of adopting straightforward and preventable steps to safeguard an individual's autonomy in decision-making. For example, when people are automatically signed up for retirement savings plans and have the option to opt out, there tends to be a significant increase in savings as the default selection is frequently preserved. Similarly, presenting healthy food choices prominently in cafeterias can nudge people towards more nutritious meals. Exploring strategies to enhance personal and community welfare. Kahneman proposes that by adeptly applying knowledge of human behavior through a strategy that respects freedom while subtly influencing choices, one can steer different policy domains, thereby not only fostering healthier lifestyles but also boosting organ donation rates and aiding in environmental conservation. He suggests that by carefully designing the settings in which choices are made, institutions can improve societal welfare and assist people in making better informed decisions, while still maintaining individual liberty. Clarifications. The dual system framework for cognitive processes, as introduced by Daniel Kahneman, involves two distinct systems in the mind, System 1 and System 2. System 1 operates automatically and quickly, relying on intuition and heuristics, while System 2 is more deliberate, analytical, and requires conscious effort. System 1 is responsible for rapid decision-making based on instinct and emotions, while System 2 handles more complex tasks that demand focused attention and logical reasoning. Understanding these two systems helps explain how our minds process information, make decisions, and can be influenced by biases. Heuristic shortcuts in decision-making are mental strategies or rules of thumb that people use to simplify complex problems and make quick judgments. These shortcuts are often based on past experiences, intuition, or common sense rather than thorough analysis. While heuristics can be efficient and helpful in many situations, they can also lead to cognitive biases and errors in judgment when applied inappropriately. Examples include the availability heuristic, representativeness heuristic, and anchoring heuristic. The availability heuristic is a mental shortcut where people rely on immediate examples that come to mind when evaluating a topic. This bias leads individuals to overestimate the importance of information that is more easily recalled. It operates on the assumption that if something is easily remembered, it must be more significant. This bias can impact decision-making by influencing perceptions based on the ease of recalling specific information. The representativeness heuristic is a mental shortcut where people judge the likelihood of an event based on how closely it resembles a prototype or stereotype. It involves comparing an event to a preconceived idea rather than considering actual probabilities. This heuristic can lead to errors in judgment when individuals over-rely on stereotypes or fail to consider the full range of possibilities. It is a cognitive tool that simplifies decision-making but can sometimes result in inaccurate assessments. The conjunction fallacy occurs when people mistakenly believe that the co-occurrence of two events is more probable than one of the events occurring alone. An example is the Linda problem, where individuals incorrectly choose a more detailed description of a person over a simpler one, despite the simpler option being more probable according to basic probability rules. This fallacy highlights how our minds can prioritize detailed, vivid scenarios over statistical likelihoods. This extraordinary book presents several compelling counterarguments. System 1 and System may second oversimplify the complexity of cognitive processes, as human thinking is not always neatly divided into two separate modes. The reliance on heuristic shortcuts is not inherently negative. It can be efficient and effective in many situations, and errors may not be as prevalent as suggested. The focus on current data by System 1 could be seen as an evolutionary advantage, allowing for rapid responses to immediate threats, rather than a limitation. System 2's methodical processing is not always superior to System 1's intuition. Sometimes, quick decisions are necessary and beneficial. The availability heuristic and related biases may be context-dependent, and their influence can vary across different cultures and individual experiences. The representativeness heuristic and conjunction fallacy may not always lead to poor decision-making. In some cases, they can lead to correct judgments. Let's continue exploring the additional key takeaways of this incredible book in order to gain further knowledge. 1. The lazy mind. How laziness can lead to errors and affect our intelligence. 2. Autopilot. Why we are not always in conscious control of our thoughts and actions. What do you think when you see the word fragment SOP? Probably nothing. What if you first consider the word eat? Now, when you look again at the word SOP, you would probably complete it as soup. This process is known as priming. We're primed when exposure to a word, concept, or event causes us to summon related words and concepts. If you had seen the word shower instead of eat above, you probably would have completed the letters as soap. 3. Snap judgments. How the mind makes quick choices, even when it lacks enough information to make a rational decision. Imagine you meet someone named Ben at a party, and you find him easy to talk to. Later, someone asks if you know anybody who might want to contribute to their charity. You think of Ben, even though the only thing you know about him is that he is easy to talk to. In other words, you liked one aspect of Ben's character, and so you assumed you would like everything else about him. We often approve or disapprove of a person even when we know little about them. For heuristics, how the mind uses shortcuts to make quick decisions. Often we find ourselves in situations where we need to make a quick judgment. To help us do this, our minds have developed little shortcuts to help us immediately understand our surroundings. These are called heuristics. Most of the time, these processes are very helpful, but the trouble is that our minds tend to overuse them. Applying them in situations for which they aren't suited can lead us to make mistakes. To get a better understanding of what heuristics are and what mistakes they can lead to, we can examine two of their many types: the substitution heuristic and the availability heuristic. 5. No head for numbers. Why we struggle to understand statistics and make avoidable mistakes because of it. How can you make predictions on whether certain things will happen? One effective way is to keep the base rate in mind. This refers to a statistical base which other statistics rely on. For example, imagine a large taxi company has 20% yellow cabs and 80% red cabs. That means the base rate for yellow taxi cabs is 20% and the base rate for red cabs is 80%. If you order a cab and want to guess its color, remember the base rates and you will make a fairly accurate prediction. 6. Past imperfect. Why we remember events from hindsight rather than from experience. Our minds don't remember experiences in a straightforward way. We have two different apparatuses called memory cells, both of which remember situations differently. 7. Mind over matter. How adjusting the focus of our minds can dramatically affect our thoughts and behaviors. Our minds use different amounts of energy depending on the task. When there's no need to mobilize attention and little energy is needed, we are in a state of cognitive ease. Yet, when our minds must mobilize attention, they use more energy and enter a state of cognitive strain. These changes in the brain's energy levels have dramatic effects on how we behave. Taking chances. The way probabilities are presented to us affects our judgment of risk. The way we judge ideas and approach problems is heavily determined by the way they are expressed to us. Slight changes to the details or focus of a statement or question can dramatically alter the way we address it. A great example of this can be found in how we assess risk. 9. Not robots. Why we don't make choices based purely on rational thinking. How do we as individuals make choices? For a long time, a powerful and influential group of economists suggested that we made decisions based purely on rational argument. They argued that we all make choices according to utility theory, which states that when individuals make decisions, they look only at the rational facts and choose the option with the best overall outcome for them, meaning the most utility. 10. Gut feeling. Why rather than making decisions based solely on rational considerations, we are often swayed by emotional factors. 11. False images. Why the mind builds complete pictures to explain the world, but they lead to overconfidence and mistakes. In order to understand situations, our minds naturally use cognitive coherence. We construct complete mental pictures to explain ideas and concepts. For example, we have many images in our brain for the weather. We have an image for, say, summer weather, which might be a picture of a bright, hot sun bathing us in heat. As well as helping us to understand things, we also rely on these images when making a decision. As we reach the conclusion of thinking, fast and slow, we are left with a profound understanding of the complexities of the human mind. By unraveling the mysteries of decision-making and cognitive biases, Daniel Kahneman invites us to rethink how we perceive the world and make choices that align with our goals and values. You can find the link to acquire a copy of this incredible book in the description box. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through the book summary of Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you found this book summary helpful, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more book summaries and insightful content. And share this uplifting summary with someone who may benefit from hearing them. Leave a comment down below if you've read this book or have any other recommendations for us. And also don't forget to explore our curated playlists of book summaries covering various topics. Until next time, keep thinking, reflecting, and growing. Happy reading!